رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه وصل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وبعد, inshallah, we'll continue with the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we left off right before our life. Alright, so let's have Osama start, please.
Visited Taif. After 10 years of spreading Islam in Mecca, the Prophet traveled to a nearby town called Taif, about 50 miles to the east. He visited the leaders from the tribe of Taif, only to be insulted and rejected by them. Accompanied by his adopted sons, they stayed at Taif for several days, calling people to Islam, but wasn't really success. It seemed that the leaders of Taif had some insults left to unleash on the Prophet. He incited the scum of society to throw stones at the Messenger of Allah sallallahu and chase him out of the sea. He targeted their legs to slow them down, but Zayd was given hit once in the head. After being chased out of the city, he decided to stop and rest for a while because his legs were bleeding. The Prophet later remarked that this was one of the worst days he ever experienced in his life. Allah was not to leave him without comfort. An angel appeared before the Prophet and told him that he could destroy the entire city because of what they did to him. The Messenger of Allah refused, saying, "I hope that Allah might make their descendants worship him only him." The Prophet was not interested in personal revenge, only with conveying the message. It was enough comfort that Allah had sent an angel to inform him that his help was all.
Alright, so we know the Prophet ﷺ during Taif, the Prophet ﷺ and Zayd radiallahu anhu, the people, they didn't treat them well, they threw stones at them. There's two incidents that happened that's not mentioned in this text. One is that the Prophet ﷺ after Taif, he was about to eat some fruit and he said Bismillah, and one of the servants, I think Addas, he accepted Islam because the Prophet ﷺ said Bismillah, and he's from the people of Iraq. So that's one incident that's showing the Prophet ﷺ right then that even if the people of Mecca reject you, O Messenger of Allah ﷺ, even if the people of Taif reject you, Prophet ﷺ, there will always be people that will follow you. Second incident that happened then was that the Prophet ﷺ, he met a group of jinn, right? And yesterday we read Surah Al-Ahqaf, right? How صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرٌ مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Right? That incident is those verses are talking about an incident that happened immediately after Taif with the jinns of Nusaybin, to show that the Prophet ﷺ, even if the people of Mecca rejected, right? Even if the people of Taif rejected, there would still be people that worship, and there's still creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing is that, subhanAllah, you see the hope that the Prophet ﷺ had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the goodness of people. He said that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may bring from their descendants people only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know, right, just historically, let's play this ahead a little bit. This is, let's take this about a little bit before the Hijrah. So the Hijrah approximately 622, 623. Less than 100 years from this time, right, there's a person that comes from these descendants named Mohammad ibn Qasim, who is one of the people responsible for bringing Islam to the Indian subcontinent. Right, subhanAllah. So the people who are from the Indian subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, right, who, subhanAllah, if you take just those few countries, the population of Muslims, the numbers all of the Middle East together. Right? Where did they come from? Where did Islam come to them from? How did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qadr work? The people from the descendants of the people of Taif. Right? And that's the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People plan, and Allah plans, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. Alright, let's continue.
On the way back to Mecca, the Prophet faced a dilemma. The news must have already reached the place that he tried to seek refuge in above, but without success. Thus, he would not safely be able to re-enter Mecca unless he had tried protection. He sent a message before entering the city to several influential people.
I'll call you later.
They politely refused. Finally, Mut'im ibn Adi offered him protection and he returned to Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ would never forget this kind of a blessing from a noble man like Mut'im.
Alright, so Mut'im, what else did he do? I mentioned him yesterday as well. He was instrumental in something. Yes, Moshe. Yet the boycott. The boycott, yes. Right, very good. All right, next, let us have, someone finish the section.
Soon afterwards, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged to remarry. He agreed to the idea and married Sauda, an early convert to Islam. She had migrated to Abyssinia with her husband and had returned to Mecca after her husband died. She was quite old and a little heavy, but the Prophet ﷺ didn't mind because she had cheerful personality. One day she prayed with the Prophet ﷺ, who as usual spent so long in his drawing that she held her nose out of fear that it might start bleeding. When she told the Prophet ﷺ what had happened, they both had a good laugh about it. The Prophet ﷺ now had an intimate companion as well as a woman to take care of the household.
Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ married after, the first wife that he married after Khadija radiallahu anha was Sauda radiallahu anha. Alright, let's have Mohammad continue.
On the tribes of Arabia. For several years, the Prophet called the different tribes of Arabia to Islam during the pilgrimage season. Since most of the tribes would have at least some of its members go to Mecca every year, most of Arabia had already at least heard about the message of Islam. Whenever the Prophet would try to approach a tribe, Abu Lahab would follow him from behind and yell insulting remarks at the Prophet. But this did not deter him from fulfilling his mission. A few individuals had accepted Islam from the various tribes, but one leader had responded to the call.
But not one leader.
But not one leader had responded to the call. Once accompanied by Abu Bakr, the Prophet went to the tribe of Zuhum. Abu Bakr asked, "Have you heard about the Prophet? He's right here, you can meet him." One man turned to the Prophet sallallahu, alayhi, wasallam and asked, "O brother of Quraysh, what do you teach?" The Prophet responded, "That Allah is one and I am His messenger." Then he recited the verses, Say, come, I will tell you what your Lord has really forbidden you. Do not ascribe anything as a partner to Him. Be good to your parents. Do not kill your children if you are of poverty. We will provide for you and for them. Stay well away from committing obscenities, whether openly or in secret. Do not take the life of Allah. Do not take the life Allah has made sacred except by right. This is what He commands you to do. Perhaps He will use your reason.
Oh, which ayah is this? You know?
Salah?
Huh?
Is it in Islam?
Is it in what?
Islam.
No.
Zumar.
No.
Nine.
أنعام. Yes. أكمل. قل تعالى أتل ما حرم ربكم عليكم ألا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا ولا تقتلوا أولادكم من إملاق نحن نرزقكم وإياهم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ذلكم وصاكم به لعلكم تعقلون. So this is like a few years ago when the open mosque day was there. We had like an ayah or something presented to the people, and this is what we chose by because this is exactly the same scenario where people are asking, what's Islam all about? And this verse and the couple of ones that follow it, they kind of summarize the teachings of Islam. Last one after this, verse after that, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. This is the straight path. We always ask Allah to make us put on the straight path, put us on the straight path, guide us to the straight path. What is the straight path? So this is, he's telling them here that this is what Islam is all about. Go ahead,
The leaders of the tribe were present and were impressed by the message. But after a brief reflection, they responded, we cannot take a hasty decision to abandon our ancestral religion. Besides, we have an alliance with Kisra, Khosrows, the ruler of Persia, and pledged that we will not ally with anyone else. The Prophet ﷺ appreciated their frankness and responded, Allah will help his religion. The Prophet also had met the tribe of Amir and explained the message. One seemingly interested individual, Firas, responded, "If we support you and you are victorious over your opponents, will we be put in power after you?" The Prophet ﷺ responded, "Everything is in the hands of Allah." The man retorted, "You expect us to put our lives in danger against all the Arabs and then give authority to someone else afterwards? We are not interested." In the 11th year of prophethood, a few men from the tribe of Khazraj accepted Islam. They lived in a town called Yathrib, which had recently been plagued with constant civil wars. The recent Bu'ath war between the tribes of Aus and Khazraj had wiped out many of their fighting men, and they were in desperate need of a solution. Calamities tend to soften the hearts of even the most obstinate of people. This might have been one of the many reasons that interested them in Islam. Another reason was that there were several Jewish tribes living around Yathrib who often spoke about the coming of a new prophet who would be victorious over his enemies. It was clear to them that this was definitely the man who matched the description, and they would be better off accepting him before anyone else. Despite their acceptance, it would have to be seen whether others from the Aus and Khazraj were interested in the message of Islam as well.
Alright, what does obstinate mean? Stubborn, arrogant. So there's two tribes. In Yathrib is Medina, right? Two tribes in Medina, there's Aus and the Khazraj. And they've been in a constant war for, I think, 40 years. So a lot of their older leadership, the people that they would have expected to take over and be a leader, got killed in this war. So there's a power vacuum. And what's the problem? If there's two tribes, and what's the problem with having a leader from either of those tribes? Let's say the leader from the Aus. How are the people of the Khazraj going to feel? They're going to feel like he's always favoring the people from his own tribe. Similar, if there's from the Khazraj, Aus people are going to feel slighted. So there is that opportunity for the Prophet ﷺ to become the leader. And that's why you'll see that one of the people who thought that he was going to be the leader is Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, right, who ends up being the head of the Munafiqeen. And he's always like salty, for lack of a better term, about this throughout the rest of his life. Because he thought the Prophet ﷺ was going to be the leader. He thought that he was going to be there, and he thought the Prophet ﷺ took that leadership away from him. Alright, pledges of Aqaba. Let us have a question.
The pledges of Aqaba. The following year, the men from Yathrib returned with a delegation of 12 people to Mecca. The Prophet met them secretly at night at a place called Aqaba. This time, the Prophet made them take a pledge of loyalty. You will not ascribe any partners to Allah, you will not steal, you will not commit adultery, you will not kill your children, you will not slander others, and you will not disobey me in any good that I order you. The men one by one stretched their hands out and shook the Prophet's hand, signifying that they accepted the pledge. Before they returned home, the Prophet decided to send Mus'ab ibn Umayr to Yathrib to teach Islam. Mus'ab was one of the early converts to Islam and faced many difficulties. He was a young man accustomed to luxury because his family was very wealthy. But the moment he accepted Islam, his family disowned him and he had to migrate to Abyssinia. The Prophet had seen him go from riches to rags, all for the sake of Allah. He knew that Mus'ab was the right person for the job.
Alright, so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet took the pledge from them. This pledge is mentioned in the Quran. This pledge is mentioned in the Quran as in ayah. Inshallah, we'll read it tonight in Taraweeh. يا أيها النبي إذا جاءك المؤمنات يبايعنك على ألا يشركن بالله شيئا ولا يسرقن ولا يزنين ولا يقتلن أولادهن ولا يأتين ببهتان يفترينه بين أيديهن وأرجلهن ولا يعصينك في معروف فبايعهن واستغفر لهن الله إن الله غفور رحيم. So this is the pledge that is mentioned here, and it's in the context of the woman as well, because later there were women that accepted Islam as well. And after that, after people accept Islam, one of the problems that we have in our communities, alhamdulillah, it's being addressed to a certain extent, but just a general issue is that when a person accepts Islam, what do they need after that? Support, right? Help. So how did the Prophet ﷺ foreshadow that and say that, okay, they've accepted Islam, now what? He sent Mus'ab ibn Umayr radiallahu anhu to them, to teach them about Islam, to help other people accept Islam, to give them that support and that information that they needed in order to grow and to flourish. A lot of times what happens is that people that accept Islam, they don't find the necessary support that they need, whether from a financial, physical, spiritual perspective, and then a lot of people end up leaving Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ had that wisdom. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu, we talked about him one day after Fajr, he was someone who, subhanAllah, had this world and he experienced it to the extent that he was so wealthy that people knew where he was by the itab. He had a unique itab that people like Mus'ab came through this valley. Right? Because he did. But then after he accepted Islam, his family cut him off. And when he becomes shaheed at Uhud, there's not even enough to cover his body. Right? That's why some of the other companions, such as Abdurrahman ibn Auf and others, they would think about Mus'ab, they would think about Hamza radiallahu anhum and others, and they'd say that we fear that we got ours in the dunya. Right? Islam brought benefits to us in the dunya later, but they never got to experience that. So they would always remember the sacrifices that people like Mus'ab and others made. Alright, what was Mus'ab's approach? Let's continue.
As soon as Mus'ab arrived, he began calling people to Islam and teaching Muslims about their new way of life. One day, while he was sitting with some Muslims instructing them, an important clan leader approached the gathering with a spear in his hand. It was clear from the look on his face that he wasn't coming to welcome the Muslims. Stop deceiving the fools in our community with the new religion and get out of here, he yelled. It was clear that he had received second-hand misinformation about what Islam really was. Mus'ab calmly and confidently responded, "Why don't you take a seat? If you like what we say, you can accept it. If you dislike it, then we'll stop bothering you." The man thought about it for a moment and decided that it seemed like a fair offer. The moment he heard what Islam truly was and listened to some verses from the Quran, he immediately accepted it. Mus'ab continued to employ this non-confrontational technique for an entire year until virtually every household in Yathir had at least one member of their family accept Islam.
And SubhanAllah, religion to them wasn't something which was very important. So if the tribal leader became Muslim, usually he would have the ability to influence other people to accept Islam. Right? For example, he'd go out and say that, "Don't talk to me until you think about Islam and you accept Islam." So people would be like, "All right, this is our leader. And so he accepted Islam. We trust his judgment." Right? And that happened a lot. All right, in the 13th year of Prophet, what happened? Vishen? Where is Aqaba? Where is Aqaba? Anybody know where Aqaba is?
Mina.
Yes, it's right outside Mina. So the Prophet said during Hajj time, in the nights they had to spend, even in Jahiliyyah time, they had to spend the nights in Mina. So the Prophet said would go and meet with the tribes during the nights in Mina. There's a masjid there right now. That's the Masjid al-Aqaba. It's not actually a masjid. It's made a little structure to show historically where this happened. All right, go ahead.
It was now the 13th year of prophethood, and this time 73 men and 2 women went to Mecca to meet the Prophet sallallahu during the pilgrimage season. They met again secretly at Aqaba, but this time they specifically requested that the Prophet come to Yathrib and serve as their new leader. Before accepting their offer, he took a pledge from each one of them. "You will listen and obey me whether it is easy or difficult. You will donate whether you are well off or otherwise. You will encourage others to do good and warn against the bad. You will not fear any censure when you do something for the sake of Allah, and you will protect me the way you protect your own families." It was clear that this pact involved much more than just performing deeds of personal piety. There was even a hint that they might have to defend against a physical attack from the Quraysh. But their faith was strong and they were prepared to face any difficulty that might come along. All of them accepted the pledge and they returned to Yathrib, where Islam continued to spread even more.
One narration has that Abbas. Who's Abbas? The uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. He went out with the Prophet ﷺ, even though at that time he was not Muslim, and he talked to them. And he said that, "Look, you guys are offering to take my nephew away. Yes, he has challenges here in Mecca, but his family is still here. And his family will help him and support him, and they'll try to minimize and bear the challenges, right? But if you take him away, are you going to take care of him?" And the people of Medina, they said, "We'll take care of that responsibility, as we would our own families and our own children." All right, the migration to Medina, or Zayd.
The Prophet sallallahu gave a green light for Bani to start migrating to Yathrib, which was renamed to
Medina to Nabi.
Medina to Nabi, meaning city of the Prophet sallallahu, or just Medina. As if the journey wasn't difficult enough, the Quraysh tried to stop as many Muslims from leaving as they could.
Suhaib?
Suhaib was once such example. He was originally from Persia, but was captured and sold into slavery. He grew up there and learned the language until he was later sold again in Makkah. The benevolent man purchased him, eventually set him free, and he was known in Makkah as al-Ulu, or the owner. He still occupied himself with business and became quite wealthy. Nonetheless, he was still viewed as a foreigner with no tribal connection. He was treated as second class. He was also one of the early converts to Islam. His status was even lower. His status proceeded to migrate to Medina. But when he was on his way out, some of the Quraysh spotted him. "Where do you think you're going? You came to that estate, and you think we're going to let you leave with all that money?" So he thought for a moment and immediately realized he had no care for all that wealth. That being Muslim in Medina was a priceless. He gave up all his wealth just just so that he could migrate. When the Prophet later heard about this transaction, he remarked, so he made a really good profit, referring to the reward he will get from Allah for such a sacrifice.
So what happened? They stopped him on the outskirts and they said that you're not going to leave with your wealth. And then he said that take all my wealth. And as soon as he got to Medina, the Prophet says the first thing that he said to him, Rabih al-Bayr ya Suhaib, Rabih al-Bayr. That your profit, your transaction was successful, your transaction was successful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the commentators say, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ رَءُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. That there are some people that basically sell themselves and everything that they have for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful to his servants, is referring to Suhaib radiallahu anhu, and the sacrifice that he made. That it doesn't matter how much money he had, what was more important than all of that was for him to be with the Muslims in Medina. Alright, another instance, go ahead.
Another instance of the difficulty migrating is in the story of Ayash and Hisham. All three agreed to meet at a certain place in the morning so that they could travel together. Morning came, but Hisham was missing. He had been detained by the Quraysh, but Umar and Ayash caught them.
Oh, that's a good point.
Decided that they must continue according to them. Just as they were leaving, Abu Jahl caught up with them and told Ayash that he has a very important message for him. When your mother heard you were leaving, she took an oath to stand in the sun and never comb her hair until she sees you, said Abu Jahl. There was another man with him and he confirmed that Umar warned Ayash that it's a trick, but they had already hit a soft spot in the sun. Ayash was determined to go see his mother, so Umar traded camels with him and said, this is a fast camel. Stay in the back, and if you see anything suspicious, you can speed away. And the three men set off towards Makkah. On the way, Abu Jahl started complaining about how slow his camel was. It was starting to slow down the entire route, so he asked Ayash, do you mind if I ride on your camel? Occupied with thoughts of his mother's situation, Ayash agreed. As soon as he knelt his camel on the ground, two men jumped on him and tied his hands. Ayash was taken prisoner along with Hisham, and it was only several months later that the Muslims managed to cross.
Yeah, so Umar radiallahu anhu, even though he wasn't able to make hijrah, Umar radiallahu anhu would always try to have contact with him and try to give him inspirational verses, that this new verse of the Quran was revealed. Think about it, reflect on it, feel comfort in it, and then alhamdulillah Muslims were able to get him out. Right? So they faced a lot of challenges. That's why it's never, and it's always important for us to go back and then talk about their sacrifices that they made, because it was hard. It was very, very hard. All right, Rashad, continue please.
Within 2 months, almost all the Muslims had already migrated, while the Prophet ﷺ himself remained behind with only a few of his companions. The Quraysh were furious that the Muslims had not only found asylum, but were given charge over an entire city. Not only that, but this city was on the way to Syria, which the Quraysh caravans would pass through in order to do business. This means that they would have to pass through Muslim territory in order to continue their business ventures to the north, which usually amounted to about 250,000 gold dinars annually. Something had to be done.
SubhanAllah, you see how history kind of repeats itself, right? So if you look at Europe, okay, Europe, Spain specifically. Spain and India. Spain is like over here, India is over here. What's all in the middle?
Middle East.
The Middle East. So when the Muslims, the Spanish were in power in 1492, right? When the Spanish overtook, kicked the Muslims out and the conquisition happened, they wanted to find an alternate route to India. Why? Because the Muslims were charging them taxes. So that's why the same year, Ferdinand, Isabel, the same people that kicked the Muslims out in 1492 are also the ones that sponsored Columbus's journey. A lot of historians say that was primarily because they wanted to find a cheaper alternative route to India, because the Muslims were charging them taxes. They don't want to go through Muslim lands, right? Similarly here, the Quraysh, they had to go through Muslim lands to go to Syria. And that's why how they raided the caravan and Badr happened. So it's important just to kind of see that. All right, go ahead.
The leaders of Quraysh held an emergency meeting with only one item on the agenda: how to stop Muhammad sallallahu alayhi. Various ideas were proposed, but it was finally decided that they must kill him once and for all. But who would dare to kill him and wage war with the entire Hashim clan and their allies? It had to be Abu Jahl who came up with the solution to their dilemma. He argued, if we get one man from each clan to stab him exactly at the same moment, the blood would be on the hands of every clan. They couldn't possibly wage war against everyone, so they would settle for monetary compensation. The idea was ingenious, although not everyone was for it. Nonetheless, it was adopted at the end of the meeting. The assassins gathered outside the house of the Prophet ﷺ just before dawn, knowing that he usually goes to the Kaaba very early in the morning. But the Prophet had already been informed about the plot and approached Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu the day before. I have been given permission to migrate. Will I have the honor of joining you? Responded Abu Bakr. Yes, he said. Abu Bakr had been preparing for the journey months in advance. He had 2 fast camels that were being fed with a special plant to make them even stronger. Just before dawn, the Prophet ﷺ slipped past the assassins undetected with the help of Allah. He immediately headed to the house of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who had prepared everything for the journey. Everything was going according to plan. They immediately headed south on foot and hid inside a cave at the top of Mount Thawr. The cave was quite a few miles away from Mecca and in the opposite direction of Medina, because they knew that search parties would be looking along those routes. As expected, the Quraysh dispatched bounty hunters to pursue them and offered a large sum of 100 camels for anyone who finds Muhammad dead or alive.
Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates this beautiful narration. She said that when the Prophet ﷺ came to their house at that time, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he started crying, and she said, I never knew that people could cry out of happiness, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to accompany the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was overwhelmed with joy at that moment, and you see the status that not only the Prophet ﷺ had for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as well. Because in the cave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the conversation, the Prophet ﷺ told him, La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana, that don't be afraid, don't worry. And it's very important, the wording, the huzn, right? La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. Fear is when you fear for yourself. Huzn in Arabic is when you have fear for somebody else. So the word is la tahzan, because Abu Bakr wasn't really worried about himself. He was more concerned about the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna Allah ma'ana. Allah is not with me, he said Allah is with us. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Alright, go ahead.
They spent 3 nights in the cave while Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's son would visit them every day to give them the news about what the Quraysh were up to. To avoid being detected, Abu Bakr had arranged for a shepherd to graze his animals on the way to Mount Thawr to cover up the tracks in his sand. While most bounty hunters were searching the roads to the north, one group of them decided to go south toward the mountain. They managed to make their way up the mountain and near the entrance to the cave. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu heard their footsteps from inside the cave and became frightened. If they just look down, they will see us. He was not afraid for himself, but for the Prophet ﷺ and the message of Islam. Be quiet, we may be 2, but Allah is the 3rd, whispered the Prophet, meaning that Allah would protect them. After searching around for a while, the men went away.
SubhanAllah, one of the things that sticks out here is that the guide that they hired for the journey, Abdullah ibn Urayqit, was a non-Muslim. He was a non-Muslim. It could have been very easy for him to say that, on the journey, to be like, okay, meet us here, 100 camels for the Prophet ﷺ, 100 camels for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and 100 camels, I remember doing some research, is like, what's the monetary value in current day and age? It's like approximately $186,000 today. Right? Imagine at that time what you could do with that much money. But the person, like there's some people that if they make a promise, they'll fulfill the promise in spite of the financial costs and incentives, and that's a person of integrity. And that's what we need to be. If we make a promise, we make a commitment, even if we have something more lucrative, if we've committed to something, carry out your commitments. Right? But it's very hard to do at times, but this is what a person's honesty and their integrity is challenged. Alright, that's why here, when you talk about, sometimes we'll talk about spider webs and different things that happen in front of the cave and stuff. And that's why it's also a little bit skeptical, because Abu Bakr said if they looked down by their feet, they would have seen us. فَأَنزَلَ جُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah sent down armies that you did not see. So there were no visible signs, according to most historians. Alright, on the 4th day, what happened on the 4th day? Let's have Yasin continue.
On the 4th day, They received news that the search effort was dying down, so they moved to the next phase of the plan. An expert desert guide named Abdullah.
Desert.
Okay.
You're fasting, so you're hungry. Yeah.
An expert desert guide named Abdullah was hired by Abu Bakr. Even though he was not a Muslim, he could still be trusted even in these delicate circumstances. He arrived at the mountain with Abu Bakr's 2 special camels and enough food for the journey. They sent out for Medinah using a rarely used route through this scorching desert. They traveled by night to avoid being detected. Whenever they encountered any desert people who inquired who they are, Abu Bakr responded, "I am Abu Bakr, and this man is my guide," in order to avoid lying outright. Although such a dangerous situation would have demanded it, he spun the word to mean the Prophet was his guiding light. Finally, after several days of traveling through the desert, Medina was in sight. The mission of Islam had entered a new phase. Muslims would no longer be persecuted minority, and they would have the freedom to practice Islam, as well as structure society as Allah deemed fit.
Why did people know who Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was more than they knew the Prophet sallallahu? Business. I remember he said 2 more things. Genealogy, right? He knew a lot about genealogy, and he was also sought out to. Sorry, he's a philanthropist. What's a philanthropist?
Person who gives supports like cultures.
Yeah, someone who has uses their wealth for beneficial causes, humanitarian causes. Also, he was an expert dream interpreter. People used to seek him out to interpret dreams. Alright, inshallah, we'll stop here and then we'll continue with this part tomorrow. Subhanahu wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.